qualquer um da
Guys, I think that really I'm going to go to futebol.
Yeah,
O Rogério Ceni.
Eu achei que ia dar pesquisa Rogério Ceni, tá ligado? Tipo.
São Paulo Futebol Clube.
Fica
Quem tá amendoim? Eu não quero. Já deixa
Bom, então sei lá, acho que todo mundo já conhece, mas só para introduzir, a gente está recebendo aqui Flora Oficina, que é o escritório da Argentina, dirigido pelo Facu Fernandes, e a Lucia e a Carol trabalham lá, e a Sabine, que é uma pesquisadora alemã, e ela está fazendo uma pesquisa sobre os SESCs para uma futura construção em Stuttgart, acho que ela pode falar isso melhor. Mas a ideia é que tipo, eles apresentem, não há nem muito, eu não tenho certeza, mas acho que vai ser mais do que os trabalhos do escritório, tipo uma ideia, né? Que esse título Conforto Prescrito foi proposto por eles e eles vão tentar trabalhar essa ideia pelos trabalhos, mais do que tipo, mostrar os trabalhos. E a partir daí acho que a gente pode conversar e ver que a gente consegue trazer pra gente, poder aprender também e poder trocar algumas coisas. Então, acho que eles vão fazer a fala em espanhol ou em inglês.
I don't know.
Talvez seja melhor em inglês.
Yes,
Got it.
It's okay.
Do it talking
O
English.
que vocês acham?
For me, it's the same.
In case
Espanhol,
we
cara,
switch
tudo
and
bem.
such.
Tudo bem, não fala.
É que ela não vai ser fala separada, né? Eles vão falar meio juntos, então melhor. Are you going to make like two presentations or tipo, okay, so
Yeah. So maybe you can explain in Spanish about it and we explain.
Or tipo, mas
Bueno, nosotras vamos a hablar de una investigación que estamos haciendo en el estudio, que es de supermercados chinos en Buenos Aires, que es un fenómeno que estuvo creciendo desde los años 90 con la inmigración de los chinos a Buenos Aires, que fueron estableciendo como estos comercios en todas las partes de la ciudad y que hoy en día creció muy exponencialmente, fue como formando un nuevo paisaje urbano en la ciudad de Buenos Aires por la frecuencia en la que se van ubicando en la ciudad. Ya casi que hay un supermercado por cuadra más o menos. Y como va formando parte de nuestra cotidianeidad, no sé, por ejemplo, siempre vamos a comprar vino al supermercado chino porque es más barato y venden muy tarde. Y es muy interesante porque muestra como un carácter de informalidad que nos interesa mucho, que también tiene que ver con como la prioridad, yo siento que la migración de ellos en establecer una vida nueva y no preocuparse por cuestiones estéticas estéticas y nada, que va más con la funcionalidad de ellos. Y esto es un dibujo de un supermercado debajo de una autopista que muestra una situación particular de Buenos Aires, como con la autopista, con la avenida, una parada de ómnibus afuera del supermercado, cartel de publicidad arriba del supermercado. Nos interesa también analizar las diferentes tipologías de los supermercados y estuvimos enfocando la investigación en qué tipo de edificios se insertan, porque estos supermercados chinos se adaptan a tipologías que ya existen en la ciudad, no es que construyen un edificio nuevo, y eso nos parece interesante, la interacción de ese tipo de programa en un edificio de Buenos Aires.
Sí, también, perdón, otra cosa que a la hora de investigar un poco cómo se desarrollaban o cómo se insertaban en distintos espacios dentro de la ciudad, empezamos a notar distintas como particularidades en tanto a la gráfica, en tanto a el mobiliario, o sea, todo lo que tiene que ver con los objetos que usan como para establecerse en un lugar. También mismo la forma que tienen como de presentarse para la escuela, o sea, para la ciudad misma, como que empezaron a ver ciertas características que se empezaban a repetir en distintas situaciones y también en distintos barrios, como que adoptaban una cierta tipología parecida, pero que también a su vez, o sea, eran parecidos, pero a su vez se insertaban en tipologías completamente distintas. Entonces es como que había una contradicción entre el insertarse en un lugar que puede ser completamente distinto, pero mantener cierta identidad que lo haga como ser particular y poder percibirse desde afuera, ¿no? Acá como empezamos a buscar un poco algunas imágenes de cómo son los supermercados chinos,
cómo interactúan, como los mobiliarios. Notamos que muchos chinos usan los mismos mobiliarios, como la heladera de Quilmes, la de Coca-Cola y mueble de papas fritas de ley.
Sí, ese ahí. O mismo ese mueble, o sea, todo lo que tiene que ver con la fiambrería es una parte muy icónica dentro de lo que tiene que ver con los supermercados chinos en Buenos Aires. Es como empieza a ser como medio un ritual también dentro del supermercado y uno también los empieza a conocer por todas estas cosas, estas características que los diferencian de otros supermercados.
No sé si hablas muy rápido.
Perdón, puede ser, perdón.
¿Está bien?
Un poco.
No, más lento, perdón. No, perfecto, perdón. Pero bueno, se empieza como a hacer notorio estas particularidades que también los diferencian de lo que son los supermercados. O sea, empieza a haber una diferencia entre los supermercados por ahí más formales, como puede ser un Carrefour o un Día. No sé cuál tiene que decir, pero por ejemplo. Y bueno, aparecen estos supermercados que medio se insertan, cumplen una función muy parecida, pero a su vez para el porteño empieza a ser mucho más atractivo y mucho más cotidiano el hecho de ir a un chino y no por ahí ir a un día, por todas estas situaciones que se dan dentro de este espacio. Como podrán ver, la informalidad es bastante, se percibe muy claramente, como que el orden.
Sí. Por ejemplo, la idea de decorar con plantas, no sé, como artificiales, se ve que hay una intención de algo, pero no sé, las discusiones.
Sí, también hay algo que se da particularmente en estos supermercados, es que ellos, hay como cierta intimidad que ellos preservan, porque uno cuando va a un supermercado chino no es que puede estar sacando fotos o, no sé, registrando todo lo que uno ve, y mismo cuando uno saca una foto, por ahí lo más posible es que venga alguien y te diga como, no puedes sacar una foto. O sea, es como que se empieza a generar una situación medio íntima de qué se puede hacer, qué no se puede hacer, porque es privado, es público, como empieza a haber una serie de situaciones como medio
difusas,
sí,
como en el sentido de los límites de la privacidad de ellos en el supermercado y la publicidad que se genera al estar insertados en una planta baja con un programa que acoge a actividades públicas de la gente de un supermercado. Por ejemplo, no sé, los chinos están en pantuflas en la caja con los hijos y es como te metes y no entendés qué está pasando.
Sí, se empieza a dar como una situación medio extraña, porque uno no sabe si está, doméstica, como uno no sabe si está entrándose en un supermercado que es o si en la casa de la misma persona que lo atiende. Entonces es como interesante también empezar a analizar esa relación que aparece y que por ahí se hace muy notoria en este tipo de establecimientos.
Muchas veces pasa también que ellos viven arriba del comercio, entonces es el lugar donde están todo el tiempo.
Sí. Bueno, y la forma, a partir de todas estas imágenes y el empezar a ir a estos lugares y registrar como las distintas expresiones y las distintas formas que tienen de desarrollarse, decidimos empezar a hacer un catálogo como para diferenciar. Nos interesa desde la tipología, desde lo arquitectónico, pero también todo lo que tiene que ver con los productos y cómo ellos establecen también como cierto, no sé si programa, pero cierto lenguaje, sí, de cómo distribuyen ellos los productos también según su conveniencia y según su
Nos interesa analizar diferentes escalas del comercio, como desde el edificio en el que están insertados, al mobiliario que usan, las situaciones que pasan, los productos que exponen. Por ejemplo, mucha gente va a comprar alcohol a los chinos, entonces entras y ya está la góndola de vinos.
Sí, medio que bueno, el catálogo, lo que empezamos a hacer es registrar esta multiplicidad de escalas, desde lo que sería lo más macro, que sería el edificio, la tipología, hasta el mismo producto. O sea, como empezar a registrar todo tipo de eventualidades que se dan dentro de este comercio. Y bueno, acá hay como dos ejemplos que serían la tipología, que es como el edificio donde ellos se insertan, que muchas veces suelen ser edificios que tenían otros usos anteriormente y ahora son supermercados chinos, o pueden ser galerías, estacionamientos, por ahí viviendas, como hay distintos usos y es muy interesante ver cómo, más allá de que todos presentan distintos usos, ellos se adaptan de una forma muy similar, más allá de que hay distintas situaciones completamente distintas. Bueno, por ejemplo, estas serían las tipologías. Acá hay 3 situaciones distintas, son 3 tipologías. Esta sería, por ejemplo, una tipología de vivienda unifamiliar. Vivienda unifamiliar nosotros llamamos a lo que tiene que ver con el chino o el supermercado chino que vive en el mismo lugar donde trabaja, sería. Después, por ejemplo, este sería un estacionamiento. ¿No? Sí, obvio. Este sería un estacionamiento. No sé si pueden llegar a ver dónde está el chino. O sea, por ejemplo, ahí el chino sería toda la planta baja. Y en una parte de la planta baja también le pertenece al chino, que es donde están como los cajones o los pallets, nosotros les llamamos. Son como los cajones de verduras.
También empieza a haber como un lenguaje similar en las rejas, por ejemplo, que todos tienen la misma reja, o el lenguaje gráfico, tienen como una necesidad de expresar lo chino con calendarios, con signos,
Sí.
que es muy interesante.
Y bueno, después la investigación también como no solamente tiene este tipo de gráficas, sino también, bueno, acá hay otro tipo de representación y que también adopta como otro lenguaje. Por ejemplo, esto sería una galería que también es vivienda, pero a su vez es un chino, como que empiezan a haber muchos usos y muchas funciones que se empiezan a funcionar. Y todas albergan el mismo tipo de chinos que es supermercado. Entonces eso es lo interesante, como empezar a ver cómo todas terminan cumpliendo una misma función.
Eso sería como las situaciones o mobiliarios donde se empiezan a ver en conjunto los productos y dónde se encuentran los productos.
Sí, de hecho son como elementos bastante característicos dentro de los chinos que nosotros notamos como que pueden llegar a diferenciar un chino de un supermercado normal. Por ejemplo, lo de la fiambrería o ese mueble que es de madera, son cosas que uno las ve y reconoce que es un chino y que no es un supermercado. Entonces, lo que intentamos es también empezar a utilizar estos como el recurso gráfico para representar estos elementos y que también hablen de la tipología del chino. O sea, que el elemento o del mobiliario también empieza a hablar de lo que tiene que ver con el supermercado chino. Y bueno, acá serían los productos.
Empezamos a catalogar también los productos, en qué parte del supermercado pertenecen, que es también como los chinos en sus sistemas catalogan los productos. O sea, tienen todo un sistema en sus computadoras para imprimir etiquetas, para la caja.
En realidad la investigación un poco surge desde un análisis a partir de un chino sobre la ciudad de Buenos Aires y sobre los habitantes de la ciudad. Como a partir de un fenómeno con ciertas características informales, pero a la vez formales, porque están dentro de un sistema administrativo formal, los habitantes optamos por consumir en estas características de supermercados. Los supermercados chinos además tienen ciertas cualidades que no cuentan con puertas, sino directamente están abiertos, y son cosas que empezamos a registrar que hacen que el acceso sea mucho más fluido y quizás sin pensarlo optamos también por acceder de esa forma. No hay ninguna barrera para entrar. Y es algo que veo bastante, la otra vez que vine a San Pablo, en los bares que tienen ustedes en las esquinas sobre todo, que no tienen puertas. Me llama la atención. Y me parece como muy fácil el acceso, muy fácil entablar esa relación con el lugar, con el bar. Y un poco qué pasa con este lugar, con estos lugares que tienen una cuota de informalidad que quizás tiene relación con nuestra sociedad, que tenemos ciertos rasgos informales en nuestra forma de vivir, no somos una sociedad súper estructurada. Entonces, esa respuesta del consumidor con un supermercado creo que también es un diálogo social, es un entendimiento que a partir de un fenómeno extranjero se plasma como una relación entre dos sociedades quizás muy distantes a partir de ciertos rasgos que nos interesa investigar en el estudio, como mirar la ciudad no desde quizás un punto de vista académico, arquitectónico, sino a partir de factores sociales o factores urbanos que pasan. Esto es un trabajo bastante de catálogo, en diferentes escalas. Por ejemplo, nos interesa la escala de producto porque estos supermercados tienen como un límite, como una franja de productos más limitada que un supermercado tradicional, porque el consumo es más espontáneo, entonces la cantidad de productos es un poco más acotada. Entonces eso también dicta cómo las personas vivimos en la ciudad, quizás con mucho más inmediatez que antes. Las compras a estos supermercados son mucho más inmediatas, el contacto es más inmediato. Pero algo que nos resulta muy interesante es cómo estos lugares tienen ciertas características domésticas que hacen que también se entable una relación con las personas del lugar y que hay como un entendimiento extraño entre una persona que no habla bien español y nosotros como habitantes nativos de la ciudad. Entonces, todas esas cosas nos interesan a partir de la investigación. La investigación es bastante rígida en muchos aspectos porque es una investigación a partir de catálogos, pero en el hacer descubrimos también cómo la ciudad funciona, el ritmo que tiene a partir de la localización de estos supermercados, a partir de las tipologías de los supermercados. Estos supermercados, como dijeron las chicas, se adaptan a cualquier tipología de la ciudad. Entonces es muy fácil a partir de un estudio de supermercados chinos entender que un área es más industrial, un área más residencial, un área más comercial, según el análisis de tipología. Y bueno, queríamos hablar específicamente de este proyecto que lo venimos trabajando desde el principio del año pasado, porque es un poco el emblema de nuestro interés, nuestra visión como estudio. Nosotros tenemos una práctica diaria que hoy no la vamos a mostrar porque quizás nuestro enfoque este es nuestro lado más
de
investigación del estudio. Nos interesa mucho y dedicamos mucho tiempo a esto y también dedicamos fondos a esto porque creemos que la práctica tiene que estar acompañada de investigación y también, por suerte, también a partir de la academia también. Ahora nosotros vamos a hacer otra presentación que tiene que ver con todos estos intereses. Es una presentación de muchos trabajos que estuvimos haciendo juntos o también separados, pero bueno, también trabajos en diferentes lados, en diferentes países, pero siempre con una mirada parecida de a dónde cómo queremos desarrollarnos como profesionales.
So now we are going to switch to language.
Did you press the button?
So I think these two words of the topic of today that you said again the prescribed comfort is something that I think it also got started with the investigation of chinas and how that this seminar of non-domestico and everything, that it is the definition of two words that wherever you go and wherever you live, like in each context, it has a different meaning, and then the encounter of these two meanings are quite interesting once you see them in space, like in the city or in architecture, or once you're able to feel them physically. And well, we put them also in the 4 different languages because we, at least in Spanish and in German, we can say that they really have different meanings, like the prescription and the comfort. And at least for me, of course, the longest version is the German version. Verordnete Gemütlichkeit is something super interesting because the Verordnung is the prescription, that in German it is, the definition of this is really something by law, like something that is given, that you have to follow. It is something very formal. And then you have Gemütlichkeit, which is, I found it super interesting because sometimes it is also used in English and in French because the word is different to comfort because it carries, in the word, it carries the meaning of a sentiment that you have made by your environment. Like it is something that is created inside of you by the space that you're inside of. And also the second meaning, it is about not being pressured in society, or like when you are having a social get-together, it is something very loose. So the feeling that you have in Germany by listening to this word is something very comfortable, like something that is super deep. And I think these two definitions put together, it is, later you will see in other pictures and in other projects that we've been working on, that Germany is a country that is super formal and that has a lot of prescriptions, but how a German society tries to put this need of Gemütlichkeit, this need of comfort into this system of formality.
also Prescrito. I don't know in Portuguese, but in Spanish it has two different meanings. So when we started discussing about the title, well, we discovered that we were talking about two different things in the same moment. At one point we say, okay, but what meaning are you using, no? So it was super interesting because Prescrito, it is something that is ended, it's finished, and also a recipe is a prescription, like she said, no? So the combination of these two titles with the two meanings of the two different words is like it's the way how we always see everything, like our practice, no? So this is what we want to talk about now. We don't have like a very line presentation. It's like a chaos, but this is how we like to work, with different support, with different material, references. We are not here to teach nothing, just to show our interests, how we kind of work, and also our experiences that we've been having in the last 2 years, like traveling and having experiences in different contexts, which is super nice that she's from Germany and from Argentina, from two very, very distant contexts, situations, whatever. But I think it's a good dialogue. And we want to start with the title of the Robert Venturi book, the complexity and contradiction. That we find this like maybe the way contradiction for me is like my contradiction with my profession, with what I learned from school. For me, it's always a contradiction. I have a contradiction that I studied architecture in the way how I don't understand architecture now. And complexity, this is what we always try to, like, not to try, but we feel being here for something. It's beautiful for us, no? Like,
I think being interested in the urban in general is you have to be interested in complexity, and I think what he says also with the contradiction in architecture or in teaching, that you always have this reduction of complexity, but the urban doesn't work with this reduction. I think it's just because we are not capable of experiencing so many things at a time, like to be able to experience complexity is something, but we also like to call it enduring complexity. You really have to endure, to face that something is out of your realm of caping these things, and it's like an ecosystem somehow, like everything is related to each other, and if you take something out, like the whole system is going to change, and that is something super interesting, because I think probably in school we are not really learning how to think inside of a complex system, but I think it's also a human kind of problem, right? Because we're not able to deal with it.
How do you see el paso de los años and the non-intervention of the architect, no? Like this is my contradiction. This is the non-intervention of an architect, which is super interesting for us. So following this introduction, we want to start talking about this exhibition we presented this year in Buenos Aires.
No. Well, it's a problem of perception was the base for this, or the title, and I think why it is also in the beginning of this presentation is because it is a base of how we like to think and how we like to work in the different contexts and meanings of things, that I don't know, for example, I go to Argentina and then they say, 200 kilometers, it's nothing. And like in Germany, I mean, it is the same mathematical distance, but in Germany it is quite far. And here, also in Brazil, it is something super fast. And to have this, the term of perception, like what do you perceive as far, as distant, as near, what do you perceive as domestic or as public, what do you perceive as near and close. I think that is something super interesting for us because we are, wherever you go in any kind of context, you renegotiate these design parameters, and wherever we go and whatever we do in our discipline, you have to really think about the context and like what are the parameters in the context. And we did this with a lot of different people, like also with them, and Gado, he's also exposing his work in the Biennale. That he showed an early stage of this in this exhibition. You know, well, we also try to have a lot of different people in there. That Soft Firm is an office in New York, so they also have a different way of thinking about things, and also different professions, like photographers or artists.
Yeah, and it's nice because sometimes we collaborate in different projects, but I feel like we are all architects. Yeah. But Jose, he's a friend of mine, like he's photographer. Yeah. But it was super nice because he collaborated with her. She will show it. But what I like is to have this kind of encounter. This is what I like. It's not something institutional. There is no chair, there is no bosses. It's just a spontaneous meeting, and that was like a spontaneous exhibition. Not very spontaneous because we applied it the first time, but it was a very, very good excuse to collaborate all together in one project, and it was super, super free. And then with the time, we started collaborating in different projects. Then we were invited by Soft Firm to an exhibition in Manhattan. Some of them we worked in the office, and Dado, he's also working with her. I don't know. I feel now it's the same with Clube, no? That they are coming to Buenos Aires after Sunday. And I feel we always like to find excuses, no? To be not only to collaborate, to be out of the system, no? Like the academia or the normal practice, what people define architecture or urban planning or whatever. That I don't care.
Well, that is also in Spanish then. But yeah, it is a text that also, if you want to, you can read it online, that describes the whole concept of it's a problem of perception. Deals with different definitions of things and how they translate into space, and how every culture and social construct is being transferred into space. And this is why all of our spaces, they look so different, because we as a society transfer different things. And this is something we found traveling through China, and I love to see this thinking about it's a problem of perception, because it is this little kid looking at something so intense, seeing something that we're not seeing, and he was so sucked into this that it is so much it's a problem of perception. And this is, so we all did different works for this exhibition, and like this is something a work I did that is manipulating satellite imagery I am super fascinated by oceans, and I cannot really say why. It is something maybe that has to do with experiencing limits or borders, or there was an exhibition in Buenos Aires of people that they have a magazine in Buenos Aires, and they did a photographic series about the position of the sea, and I thought it was super poetic that they showed pictures of the coastline in Argentina and the coastline in Spain, and I mean it is the same, it is the beach, it is the coast, but only by the people who were using the coast. I could understand the context. In Spain you could find a woman with, like a Muslim woman covered sitting at the beach, and immediately I knew has to be Europe. But like this space that is connecting the different pieces of the world, and that is something that we are not capable of experiencing. I think it is super powerful, and also that we are not really mapping. We are not really defining the ocean as a territory, and it is not really in the realm of mapping and making it experienceable. And this is why I started to make it visual.
Thank you. And it was super interesting because it was a collaboration, like super spontaneous, because we visited my friend that he's a photographer, that he was taking he has a series of pictures of the water. So immediately we invited him to participate, to dialogue with her project, and I don't know, it was a very nice experience, maybe without planning. So
yeah. And these are like 2 or 3 different captures, satellite captures of different oceans, like mixed into one image.
That was a poster of this project. That it was a collaboration with this institution that is called Chela. There is a very big old factory that is now a cultural center in the south of Buenos Aires. Yeah, she got me to show after us, but it was a show. No, but it was a collaboration to do a kitchen for artists. So we started discussing, okay, what is the limit of the kitchen, or the context of the kitchen? So this is like the beginning of when we started thinking about domestic. What is the limit of a domestic space? What we call domestic. What is domestic? Now we are doing a seminar about domestic uses, and to explore about those limits. So that was the complete kitchen. It was a prototype. Of course, there is no kitchen there, but it is a kitchen. So these are some material from different people, from different countries, from different cities in the same country also. There are a lot of those videos that we use it, of course, to publicity. But we like the production, no? All of us, we like the production. We like to materialize things. And materialize things is not only to build, no? Like to collect material, to exchange material. Also, this is to materialize something, no? To be talking with you.
Is it the last sentence? Yeah. I think one of the most important things for us, and it's a problem of perception, is that every single one of us has like a specific way of seeing the world and how to describe the world. And then you have another layer of our profession, that we as architects and designers, we describe the world in a certain way. But if I ask a mathematic person or a lawyer, like everybody has their own codes and descriptions of how to explain and describe the same thing. And I feel if we would, also one of the aims of It's a Problem of Perception was to to see and to exchange all these different definitions and all these different perceptions of how to experience environment, because the more we share our perceptions, the deeper our understanding of our environment gets, because we experience different readings, and the more we know, I don't know, the more multiple is our understanding of the things. And so we really enjoy sharing definitions and understandings, and we're also super interested in knowing like what a Brazilian context, a Brazilian culture, how you define space and things for yourself.
Well, like there is no line in this conversation, so we're going back to China. But this is very short. Just to mention that I told before that we like our practice in terms of investigation. So probably, I don't know, here in Brazil, probably similar to Argentina, I don't know. But we don't have a lot of funds like to sponsor this kind of researches or this side of the architecture, no? This side of our profession. But with the time, we feel like it is possible. Maybe in Germany there are a lot of funds for research, but from our little studio in Buenos Aires, we decided to work on that, no? And this year we were invited by Yale to in an exhibition with some friends from China that we met in China and we went last year. So it was I've been invited as a guest architect to give a conference about this topic, and what I like, I don't know, we decided to start working in this research just because of the perception that I had in my neighborhood to go to every day to the supermarket, and I found that it was quite strange in my city going to Chinese, not being able to talk with the people, but it was a common understanding between us, but at the same time it was super distant. So it was a feeling, at this time. And I don't know, we decided to start working. Unfortunately, we received funds from the government also to continue not a big fund, to continue the research. And then I traveled to Yale. There was an exhibition which exposed our material. I did a lecture. And I feel like sometimes with a very small interest, like this is something super, super small. It talks a lot about limits. What is the limit? Okay, maybe we are in a different context than Germany, but it doesn't care. It's everything is about discipline and to be conscious about our capacities, and then, well, before that, we went to China. We did a workshop about supermarkets, but in hutons in Beijing. Hutons are the very old neighborhoods in the city. We worked together. So it was a crazy experience for us. It was my first time in Asia. And we discovered a very, very different context. And I don't know, being there, it opened us like a gate that we never were looking for, And for me personally, I started getting more and more into this kind of topics. This is the modern. Well, this is part of the research also that they show. But with the time we expanded our interest to Germany, as we spent time also in Germany as well as in Buenos Aires. So, what is the title? So that was super interesting. TripAdvisor for me is a very good website. super good material. And of course,
it says welcome to Germany with a picture of a kiosk. And while starting to work with these little supermarkets or kiosks in Germany, I also got to know how different Germany is, because there are regions, of course, in Berlin where you have all kinds of late night kiosks and supermarkets, and whereas I live in the south, it is very rare to find a kiosk, but it is also very closely linked to the society that is in the south. It is more rich, that has more limits and more formal systems, but it is a super inclusive typology, this kiosk. You have all kinds of different products and objects that respond to different people and different needs, and so you can find all kinds of different people in this context. And most of the time they are also run by people who migrated to Germany at some point. And also another very interesting thing is now slowly the big post offices, that it is a super formal system like the big German post, they are closing more and more chains, like big chains, and they are entering small kiosks. And that is something so crazy these kiosks, they have like a perimeter of maybe 2 streets or 3 streets, and you have a super big formal company entering into these little kiosks, and they change like the entire atmosphere.
It was super nice because it is the encounter of a very formal system, like a DHL system. Those very little kiosks run by Turkish. No? And at one point when they were opening this, this is already open. When they were opening this DHL, this kiosk, there was the German employer teaching how to work with the post office to the Turkish, that he was working like all his life in this place, no? And this is super interesting, the dialogue with the formal system, like a German system, in a quite informal
No, but to know, because she was the woman that I always went to in the big, what did you say, the chain earlier. And she, all of a sudden, this woman that she was in the post office, German post office uniform and everything, all of a sudden she was in this small kiosk, like in her normal clothes, and trying to teach the other people that they never worked as a postman before. But now they have to operate in the system, and I think now is a good time to start capturing these moments, because I think at one point it will formalize again.
Well, that is an example from London, which is super interesting, because it is off license is the common name to call this kind of liquor stores, which it is in the same line of the Chinese supermarket, of the kiosk, of the Wiki in Berlin, that is other technology. But it is super interesting the title. It's off license because they usually sell alcohol after hours. So, and I don't know, we are also studying, started to study those two technologies.
Yeah, and I think as a contrary to this, to these very small, specific, more informal systems in Germany, for example, like this is a very formal situation in Stuttgart, in Germany, that we have. I don't know if you've heard, we are building right now like a very new train station, and it was very political, and I think we also are still in the process of grasping this scope of formality, because in the scale of a formal project like this, there is going to be so much vulnerability in this formality.
Yeah, and I think it talks a lot about but for me as Argentinian, to see this, well, in those videos you don't realize how massive is this. It's so big. But in the same city, you have those very sensitive things, like living together. And that's why we call vulnerability of the formal city. Example of Stuttgart,
I feel like the more formal something can be, the more vulnerable it is. And big projects, like a big infrastructure project, it is so vulnerable in so many ways.
Yeah, what we call vulnerable to the social encounters of the people, for the social understanding within the city. This is not related to this, like this, no? It helps a lot to transport people probably, but nothing really happened to it like this. And this is why now we want, so we decided in Stuttgart Stuttgart is quite a formal city, very formal city. That's why we wanted to start looking where people is trying to express themselves in the city, Probably in Latin America you can find everywhere, because the regulations in the city are like there is no very visual limit, so it's you can find very informal situations, but we find this like the expression of the people, and it was the test was okay to start walking in Stuttgart to say, okay, where is this place in Stuttgart for you? That was difficult.
Yeah, I mean, if you would go to Berlin, it is much more easier to find these places. But in Stuttgart, where you have all the big companies like Mercedes, Porsche, Bosch, the money is really ruling the entire city, and to find these kind of places is super rare. We have unlearned how to use the space.
So now we're going back to China, to those situations we filmed in Beijing, and this is what we mean with this title, because we don't really want to talk about informal as favelas, as villas, That is it's a topic in architecture, in research. But we don't want to be naive about this. We just want to be sensitive about the context of the people. We don't need to go to the favelas probably to deal with this, because we don't want to enter this field. We want to stay in the city and to see our closest context. Of course, I feel personally you need the other responsibility also to work in favelas and to work in Villa. That is my discussion with some architects that they are working there, like a safari, to go to play in the favela, in the villa, we call villa. So that's why this is not a villa, this is not a favela, this is Beijing, and we find those things super sensitive, you know. And this is what we mean when we talk about the vulnerability of the formal city, you know, that you don't find this, for example, in Stuttgart, or probably it's harder to find it. But people, they express themselves in the public space as they want. For example, in China.
It's also interesting, I think, that to see how those types of behavior translate exactly to context like in Buenos Aires and Chinese supermarkets. Like that merge of Oriental and Occidental culture, I think it's very interesting.
I don't know, there is something in the formal city probably, an informal context, that is the time. If you look at those videos, there is something with the time, like how people use the time, that is different. So this is Buenos Aires. That is an informal and formal city. It is Buenos Aires. I don't know if you know like the plan of Buenos Aires, but it's a very formal, rigid structure with quite formal typologies, block typology that she's investigating about this. But with the time, well, it was a very European city at the beginning of the 20th century, and now we are investigating about our real city, no? And for us, like this mess that we say in your university, that is a mess, that all the mistakes that we can find in the city, it is our real city. Because we received like a European city that probably it never belonged to us, and I'm sure that it never belonged to us. So now, with the excuse again that we are working in one of the densest areas of the city, that is the microcentro. We call microcentro. We are doing a project there. We started going every day there. It's super close to our office, that is also in the center. It's the densest area of the city, but it is super interesting. This is our how we get money. This is the things that we do. We are doing a co-working space. It's a four-story building with 1,800 square meters, and we are doing the co-working now. But it is super motivated to go there because we are in the middle of, how do you say it?
I don't know.
The chaos.
The chaos. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if this area is the same as the area that we are building in the co-working. It's like I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's super inspiring that we are going every day to work in one field, but working also in another field. Because we are always surrounded by this atmosphere that is super dense, super strong, but super beautiful for us.
And it's generally the place nobody wants to go to because it's super like business. Yeah, people go to work only. Like at night, there's no one in Microcentro, and the pace of the people is really quick, and the streets are very narrow, and I don't know, it's a mess.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting mess because if you stand there, you discover so many mixtures of all kinds of people, buildings, cars, whatever. And this is something that, well, our studio is 15 blocks.
Yeah, something like that.
15 blocks from there. Blocks is 100. So a lot of friends, they ask us why you are located there, no? Because it's a mess for architects, no? But I feel like we should be there, and I feel more people should be there, because we have to deal with the city, with a real city, not to solve problems, because we don't think solving problems, we don't mind to solve problems.
It's clear that there are no problems.
No, and this is the contradiction that I have with academia, that we are always trying to solve programs, to solve buildings, to solve problems of the city. I don't care. Well, sorry. So this is our seminar in the University of Buenos Aires. That is called Non Domestico, and 2 weeks ago we decided to start working in the area of the co-working of this project with a group of students. So everything, as I said, is an excuse, for us. Like probably this meeting is an excuse for something else. It will be like this. So everything is quite connected, because that was like part of the presentation of the seminar. That this picture, we took this picture of also from TripAdvisor when we projected this documentary from Rio. I don't know if and I feel like this documentary is super interesting for us, and we want to deal with those I don't know situations. I don't know, in the way how Eduardo Coutinho deals. I feel like it is a very fresh way how to approach with people, how to approach with the city, but not pretending more than connections. Or it's a very sensitive way, I feel. This is our, it's like this. It was like that. And this is some of the investigation of the people who's doing the seminar. And what I like is that there is a big mixture of researches, because the structure of the seminar is to do like your own research around the topic of non-domesticals, which is super weird, is super, I don't know, there is no like a very thin limit, there is no exercise. It's just to redefine what is a research and to do it.
Yeah,
and this picture is the other way around.
Well, and I think to add to your critique to the academia, I study in Halle, and there's no space for investigation. It's like you go to your project class and they give you a program and you have to find a solution for that in like 4 months, and you end up like designing a building that's filled with nothing.
Well, actually, your chair is very good.
No, my chair is very
I must say that, of course, it is probably a critique of a general situation, but there is a very good, now, for example, in our university, there are very good people, young people working there, so, I don't know, I feel very positive now with the situation in the university. FADU is the biggest university in Argentina, so don't know, you have all kind of different chairs to choose, I don't know, but it's true what you say. So this is the microcentro. We find so many interesting architecture examples, not, of course, not recognized by nobody, but used it for all the people. And I feel like this is the spirit of the architecture in this area, like the people who uses and who make la forma altos contextos. Yeah. That's why I find also super interesting Sao Paulo, no? Because that's probably, you could say that is Sao Paulo.
Yeah, we were just in 24 de Mayo, and you have the galleries on the other side, and I thought about it.
But sometimes you don't need to go to that building, no? Or what we call Galeria Jardín, that is the Galleria of modernism. You can go, you can just explore the city. I don't know, this is what we are doing now, working there, like taking our time after the construction to go to walk around. So this is how also we like to work in the office, like to have this mix of practice that is also super interesting, but we don't want to talk today about this. So it is always connected with the moments when we are in Germany, when we are here, when we were in the United States some months ago, like trying to discover this architecture, this world, you know? That was in Russia, for example. That was in China. And that area was super interesting because behind this building there is this very massive OMA building of the TV public, no? But right next to this building you have this very sensitive situation in the same area. Actually we didn't want to go because you had to cross a very big avenue. But I don't know, it was just a beautiful building for some people. For me it was so beautiful, no? But it's just a building. I don't know. I don't discover it. I feel it's more interesting for me to find it in the magazine. So that now we are going back to the seminar. And this is a Walter Gropius project for how to organize your house, like a prototype of house and the prototype of furniture that you have in the house. So these are some examples that we are working in the seminar, and it talks a lot about the domestic space. That when Bauhaus they started working indoors, in this scale of furniture, they discovered they started dealing with domestic situations. I feel like it was a fascinating investigation, but now we don't. It's like we want to find other limits in the seminar. Like what is the real cut of what is domestic space? What is a domestic space? Or do we define a domestic space like our home, or it could be something else? That's why the Japanese in the 70s and also later with the Atelier Bobo, for example, and also, sorry, Tokyo Detective Office. This is, well, I didn't put Tokyo Detective Office. I like how they discover city from a very sensitive way, no? Like looking like the impact of the people in the city, the impact of the decisions of the people of the city. And this is when I like to learn about the decisions, you know, that we usually learn how to take decisions, but not to investigate or to learn about the decision of the others. And I feel like the 70s and then later with Atelier Bobo, there are a lot of investigation around this, you know. So we are also working with this, also with photographers. This is in Hong Kong, and also trying to find also the limits of what is a house, for example. This is in Aleppo, in Syria. Or this is a wagon in Germany. That was the wagon in Germany. This is Tokyo Office. So, with all of this, now we are, you didn't know about this, we are trying to start working also in next year in Germany, like doing this seminar also in Germany. And try, this is a typology that is called
Späti. Yeah. And Späti is like a cute way of, it's called like Leti, because it's open all night. And it is something very specific for Berlin or maybe also Hamburg, that they are the cities where you can really find stores, these kind of stores open 24 hours. And they are also usually run by people who migrated at some point to Germany, and so you have like this very other culture or world that you're entering in these very small typologies. And yeah, I think it's going to be like another example of the sensitivity in a very formal context.
Yeah, this is how we like to work with material, you know, with pictures, with a lot of information that and to produce it, you know, to walk in the city, to take pictures, to film, and then to go back to the studio and to formalize everything. So we wanted to finish this conversation with this picture that I feel it represents a lot. The title of this talk. That we took this in China. It was a break and they were exhausted. So this is a kind of comfort probably.
They find it in a very prescribed context.
That's it. That's it. Thank you very
Well, thanks a lot for sharing with us the amount of work and thoughts. We are really grateful that you did that like almost a vacation period, and you are here and you prepare it very careful, your presentation, like we can see the amount of work, and yeah, I would say careful and kindness also, the generosity in talking, in showing us this lots of issues. And I don't know, maybe I could start highlighting, not addressing a question, but more highlighting a topic that, if I get well, it's that goes through almost all the presentation, which is space in between. And for example, this is the public and private spheres, and also, but I was very interested in when you start to say about academia and what is this about, and you said, oh, actually I don't care. And for 2 days ago, I was listening to an interview with Stephen Bates, you know, the British architect, and he was talking about this, that his office makes books, makes exhibitions, makes a lot of things besides the architectural practice and besides the academic practice. And he said, I don't know what it is, but I call architectural learning. Yeah. And I think this is very interesting, and I think as Guilherme, which is here, keeps saying to me, to us a lot, we can see a significant change in the practice. Like, but also I think we have to be very careful in doing so and speaking so, because, for example, in Brazil, we are through a terrible crisis of academia, that like the government is against science. So yeah, basically is that, and so we have to be careful in like addressing criticism to academia, because we know how important it is. I'm not saying that you are saying that, but so we are always like how to put this, and then I was thinking about the thing we did with Matteo Guidoni 1 month ago. We were talking about the Sun Hope experience too. That is a publication in between an academic approach and a commercial one. And he said that there is a huge gap between this. And so, and as you said, in Germany maybe we have a lot of formal institutes that have funds to support, and here in Brazil, and maybe in Argentina we don't have, but in São Paulo you don't have a Mount space, for example. It's crazy to think that at least you have this, and also there is a word from Bob Venturi, both and. So it's both interested in academic issues with historical background and addressing our practice into history and into, I don't know, all the intellectual efforts, but also in doing like this, like addressing attention in small problems that is of our everydayness. And also I think this is another topic we could put in the in-betweens, is what is that about this domesticity debate that it's crossing our practice nowadays. We are having a bienal that's called Every Day. We made an exhibition that's called Rooms. What is this about? We are doing this in an apartment, like a living, with this view. And I am always also thinking if it's between maybe a lack of our professional importance, and I don't know if important, but at least presence in society. At least here in Brazil, we don't have architectural discussing the journals, like the daily news. It's super hard. So what is this about? I know your talk was about this, but maybe we could start to change something here more in a formal way. I would appreciate it.
I feel like your context is so good.
Yeah. I don't know, I think it's I don't know, when you talk about being in a room, talking with people, and maybe even talking about things of the ordinary or of our normal or daily life, it's maybe having something, I don't know, everything I talk about I relate it to maybe tinestinas or having to do with something domestic, but I think that it has to do with that feeling, like to talk about something that maybe everyone can relate to, because at least I don't know if everyone here is an architect, but maybe we start to get to know or maybe to care about certain things that maybe are important to the practice, and because of all the globality and everything, they are maybe not taken care of or not taking like the importance they should have. And I think that maybe like this thing, like being in a room and talking about these certain things has something to do with that, like to care about like something that is maybe domestic or something that has to do with our ordinary lives, that has to do with something that is important because, I don't know, I think that if you don't, I don't know, when you see like how a Chinese guy is running around the supermarket and you don't relate to that, I think that it should, like, I don't know, it's like super ordinary, like you see that on your daily life, so I don't know, I think that it has to do with giving the importance to what's the ordinary and maybe the, I don't know how to say, cotidiano.
Well, there is one definition that is infraordinary.
Well, that, yeah.
That is the extraordinary of the ordinary. You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like we've been discussing about this word
Yeah, in seminar.
this week. And the infraordinary is like it's so interesting to learn from the infraordinary. I don't really know how is here the context of being architect or being in university. I feel like it's nice to work from university, stay there, but also here.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I remember the very day that I heard this, that I listened to this Bates interview. I also listened to the one with that French critic Irénée Scobert. It's a guy who studied at EA with Caruso, São all those guys. And he said something that I thought was very beautiful and like strong and acid. Because he says he's not an academic, he has no like PhD and stuff, but he writes a lot. And he says, oh, academia for me is the opposite of traveling, and I like to travel. So it's funny because the rigor, the formality, I don't know, and for example, here in São Paulo, FAUSP is quite far from the here. And I don't know, it's something really complex also, this way to teach, this way to, so I think we should do things more like this in between, like both ends.
Yeah, we are discussing this with our friends too. Like where is the context? We have, fortunately, wanted this place. I feel like it's a fresh air for young generations. But also this, to meet in the studios, because I think it's a very fresh conversation.
Yeah, that's it.
And for me, it's to learn, I know. And I think it's nice that, well, actually the seminar we are doing in university, but in the last 2 weeks we are doing like the classes out of the school. And we are deciding to change locations every time. Discussing about what is the domestic space for classes, for example. I don't know. And this is what I want to ask things, you know. I am super tired to define things, to have this egocentric thing of the architects, that we are the guy that has to decide the things, no?
Yeah.
Of course, we are deciding things because we have plans.
No, but I think that it's also interesting to, sorry.
No, I was talking.
I think it's also interesting to start to speak or to get into a conversation from observing like different scenarios. Like I believe that maybe sometimes the architect, like as Carlos said, like it's solves like problems, or it's, I don't know, it's more related to that, like solving like certain problem and certain solution, and it's not dedicated to observing and to like paying attention to what happens in the city, to certain behaviors that maybe are related to like what ordinary means. And I think that should also have like an academic background, and it doesn't mean that it's not like
Yeah.
serious enough, like to talk about something that happens in our ordinary life. I think that it should have the same background as, I don't know, talking about.
Yeah, but this is the like our question when we started. It's a problem of perception. Right?
Yeah.
What is the problem
Yeah.
for us? What do we have to solve? What is the? I don't know. This is all the time we were asking ourselves. Okay, but what is the problem? What is a formal city? What is a informal city? Why do we define formal and informal? You know.
Yeah.
Actually, we are defining this. Why? I don't know. It is a question of language, probably, but there are questions.
Yeah, and even it would be really interesting, like, to know even your point of view in all of these topics. Like, we were lucky to have this kind of conversation, even with Sabine, that like comes from a completely different background, and it's super interesting to get to know like people from other parts of the world, to be like world, but I don't know, but to know like how they perceive this kind of situations. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a supermarket or a kiosk, or I don't know how you call it in Berlin, or
Yeah, maybe it's an infrastructure. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think for us to be here is such an experience because first of all we are not very in touch with residents.
Yeah.
So we are very happy to be with you, and of course you are super nice for you. And I feel like the world is very small now
Yeah.
with the connections and things. So we have to take advantage of this. So we have possibilities.
I feel for me it always comes back to the complexity, that addressing all of these everyday and ordinary issues, or what we see in the Biennale, is like all these moments in between that, but they are internal parts of this system, like of this complexity. And I love that the quote that you said about traveling in academia, that
It was Clube.
But the other day I was listening to a podcast about Humboldt, Alexander von Humboldt, that it talked about that Karl Marx, he was a philosopher too, but he was like at his desk doing philosophy. And Alexander von Humboldt, he was like an explorer, like he went to see, he said he cannot describe the world that he lives in if he hasn't seen the world. And what he ended up doing is to define the theory of an ecosystem, like to see the complexity of how everything is connected. And I think we cannot understand the complexity of our world if we are not seeing all the little parts, and this is what the Biennale does right now, to shine a light, or to put a light, or to visualize all the things that we forget, or that we don't tend to see as part of a very important system.
No, but it's super precise to say things about Humboldt, because, for example, Scalbel talks about to gauge these trips to Italy, the Italian trips, and also he analyzed in a quite famous essay. I don't remember actually the name, but it's very influenced from something like this. The romantic painters, just before the picturesque.
I think it's very good.
And I think what you said about like what's private and what's not private, and what's domestic and what's not domestic, it also talks about like what is our role like architects in that kind of like aspect, like the domestic aspect. I think that is like or at least like the least architect like way of seeing things. Like when you see something that is like completely invaded with stuff, it's not something that we relate to as architectural. Like we are used to see something that is like architectural as like plain or minimalistic, or like with not many things, like just like the structure and that's it. And maybe like to see like how something is domestic and how something is appropriated, it also like puts us as architects in question, like what's our role in that, like are we like doing, how to say, like revelamos, like do we negate, do we deny that, do we don't, like how, like what part do we take in that? I don't know, I think that it's interesting to start to like to reflect in that kind of ideas, like what's domestic, what's not, what's our like our role in that. Like, I don't know, I think that it can go like to so many.
Yeah, I've been teaching architecture studio for 5 years until this year that I am doing my own seminar. And my question was always, what the fuck is a program? And I had to teach how to do a program. So it was so controversial for me because I was always thinking myself, okay, what is the program? Why should I say what is a program? That was my contradiction teaching, no? To the students. But thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if sei se alguém quer fazer um comentário.
Just something about the methodological part that for me is quite interesting to think about. Recently, I have done, along with Gabriel in Luis, like representative drawings of iconic buildings for São Paulo, and the subject was not the building itself, but the life of the building. And when you are doing the drawings and see those things, we see something very similar to the supermarket, the China supermarkets. It's like the system of objects that lives inside the buildings. And for me, this type of research is very cool because it shows that it's a problem of the discipline, as Gabriel said, but it's also a problem of design, of system objects. And it's very interesting to think a house not by rooms and also by the pieces that make it a house.
But there is one house, the Smithson's house, that is called the storage room,
Yeah.
the storage house. That makes me crazy.
And for me, this kind of research is very, very good to see the limits of the discipline and see sometimes not a problem of a room, it's a problem of the pieces that are inside the. Because this is like 4 years, 3 years, and it's that. But depends of system of objects that lives inside. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of the most interesting for me to see.
There is one guy in the seminar that he's working with, he's still living with his parents and with one brother. And he's working with, the house is a mess. It's a complete mess, it's so crazy. But this mess is quite, there is like a system of this, because everything works and everything has, for example, it has a combination of different objects that with the time they are like in one position, that that probably it was a chair, that now the cat is sleeping there, and but this chair used to be the chair when he was studying in the other room. So he's like exploring about the combination and the generation of those objects. He doesn't care about the architecture content, no? But he's like working with the connections of the elements of this mess, because he lives in a mess, but he's trying to understand like the logic of this mess. I find this super interesting.
Yeah, what I have to think about when you say this and when you say this, that just to read what is there, like how people just make decisions in space with furniture and objects, because it is something that everybody is capable of doing, that everybody can construct a house. And to go and to try to understand by the positioning of the things, because subconsciously we make these decisions out of personal reasons, and to understand people, how they make decisions or just where they come from based by how they position things. And then it is super interesting that we as designers probably, we kind of get to, we are taught by, no, a table, it has to be like in parallel to the window, or like this doesn't have to go there. And I think this is something that you will also say when you talk about teaching, like to reinvent the teaching and what is design, what are the rules of this, that probably all of us, that we are not really true in how we put things in a room, because we are being kind of taught how to put things in a room, and to analyze these everyday spaces that are not made by people who are being taught, to see, I think, is to experience something very true.
Well, actually, I had an experience some weeks ago that I have a meeting with also a very young couple, that they wanted to make a house with feng shui. It was one of the most, I don't know, interesting experience I had with the client. We stayed at 3 a.m. Like they were telling me about the feng shui. And I don't know. It was super interesting. And he asked me, do you learn in university feng shui? No. But it was super interesting, you know. And this is what I mean, like, I don't know, it's like pre-jugar.
Judge. Right.
You know, things that probably to discover, you know. But it was, I learned a lot about feng shui, of course, but I learned a lot how, like, what they really were feeling about the word feng shui and whatever, no? And then we found like an understanding of, I don't know, a very crazy understanding, you know. And we didn't talk about the house. We were talking about elements.
And how they feel about the space, how they really
I don't know, the guy, he sells like engineering pipes for petrol, I don't know, and she works in tourism, but they explained me like very sensitive things about how to live in a house. Feng Shui was the name of this, because they don't know about Feng Shui, I don't know that, but really, they teach me how they perceive like the life, like on how they would like to perceive the life in a house, for example.
like super honest.
Super honest.
And maybe probably, maybe it's also wrong because we have feelings in space too, but sometimes I feel we are not honest in how we put a table or how we put up things, because it's what we have to see. And
because it already has a meaning.
Yeah.
And for them it doesn't. Like they don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I would like to see this. Well, this show.
So thanks for the gift.
Wow.
Yeah, actually there's a hole in the kitchen that fits perfectly.
Actually, we were thinking not to take it. Because if you like, you can keep it.
I really love it. Really.
It's a contribution for the opening of this.
No,
really.
No, really?
Yes.
Applause.
I have a winner.
In my kitchen, Brazil.
But you have to fix the balls because we forgot the keys.
Just not in my kitchen, Brazil.